Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Wrestling Guardians podcast with Dan and Anir. And today we're looking at Crown Jewel 2021 that's just happened yesterday. I think my expectations of the show were pretty low going in because of our previous experience of Saudi shows. But how about you, Anir? Were you looking forward to the show? Did it live up to your low expectations?
Comfortably surpassed my low expectations then, because I ended up just watching the show because it's on like an easier time slot to watch if you're not in the States. And without Dynamite I hadn't gotten my a fix of misery for the week. So I thought I'd punish myself by watching Crown Jewel. But yeah, it turned out to be, a decent show to watch in the end.
Ditto on the time slot as well, because it's like the one show a year where it's just so convenient for British fans. It like starts at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just fits in perfectly. It finishes by sort of 9:30, 10 o'clock. It's just like I'd like to see obviously more pay-per-views on British soil in the future, but this is as close as we get really in the UK. So yeah, that definitely helps, and yeah, that's probably the reason why I decided to sit through and watch it all. I wasn't too. There's a couple of matches on the card that I was fairly intrigued by, but was there any matches for you that you were, sort of excited to see going in?
I was curious to see how they would get out of Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, because it seems that the plan is for those two guys to go all the way until WrestleMania. How they'll get there, maybe it'll be Lesnar winning the Royal Rumble, I don't know. But I was curious to see how they'd get out of that match. Seth Rollins and Edge, I knew what those two guys were capable of, but I can't say I particularly care for the storyline, so I wasn't that involved in it. And I think that's about it, really.
Yeah, pretty similar for me. The Edge and Seth Rollins one was a strange one, because I suppose I kind of wanted to be invested in the feud because obviously, being a slightly older fan, I've got that respect for Edge, and I just think he's able to carry a feud pretty well. Seth Rollins, overall, I'm not that keen on, but they're two guys that seem to work together reasonably well. They've had a few decent matches already. So yeah, I suppose first match, so might as well start there. So I think my first reflection on this was that I was surprised that it was opening the show. It was by far the longest match on the card. Obviously, the Hell in a Cell stipulation, which we all know about, and even just the way that Edge's victory was presented at the end with the huge display and the fireworks and everything. And I just thought this feels more like either like the close of a show or like semi-main event status. So it's funny that it, for me anyway, that it opened the show.
Yeah, I think so. Best match on the show for me, Dan. I really enjoyed the way they used all of the weapons. I thought it was quite creative. It wasn't a typical AEW style go fest as those things can be, and people go crazy for it. I was a bit worried when it looked like they would go 27 minutes, but went by pretty instantly. Both these guys did a great job, I thought, and it's a great moment for Edge. He came out as a big babyface and everything, and so you and I sort of disagreed about Seth Rollins. I gravitated towards Seth Rollins a few years ago, well, primarily because there was nobody else in WWE. But I don't like this character that he's playing. Maybe this is an opportunity for him to hit the reset button. Go away for a little while, and come back as a babyface and challenge Roman Reigns down the road. But that's probably wishful thinking. He's going to be back on SmackDown doing the same goofy shit next week.
Yeah, my approach would be for him to go away and never come back, personally. But that's just me. But no, I suppose I do have to give him some credit here for taking part in this match, and it does take two to tango at the end of the day. But I was really it just reminded me of the kind of level of performance that Edge is able to deliver. Like for me, the match took a while for me to get really invested in it. Like the first third of the match felt like they were just going through the motions of a typical, modern day Hell in a Cell match, which is basically just a like a standard no disqualification match inside a cell. But they used it a little bit later on. But for me, it's just like Edge's facial expressions and his way of telling that story in the match was really impressive, and it was really on display here. Like, I don't know, like when he gets hit by, whatever it is, Seth Rollins' boot or whatever, like the way he reacts to it and his sort of facial expressions when he hits the mats. Like for me, I feel like I can buy into that, and for the large part, that's an art that's kind of been lost today, I think.
Yeah, and for all of Seth Rollins' athleticism and his ability to do crazy spots and everything, when he just starts cackling like a maniac in the middle of the match and sort of screws himself over, that's not something you want to buy into, no?
Yeah, it's completely over the top, and yeah, it is enough to take you out of the occasion. I mean, if I was ever going to say anything slightly positive about Rollins at the minute, is that he's slightly more tolerable as a heel than he is as a babyface. So I don't know whether hitting the reset button and turning him face again is going to do anything. I think that just makes him just going to put me off him even more. But yeah, definitely though that contrast with Edge's sort of history and knowledge of professional wrestling and how to sell it to the audience in a convincing way, and then Rollins is just complete over the top theatrics that again just kind of take you out of it. But yeah, I think Edge kind of carried Seth to a pretty decent match.
Yeah, this was well done, I guess. I mean, and best match on the show. I wouldn't go as far as to say this was a 5-star match, but yeah, I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty far from being a 5-star match, but well, opinions vary, obviously. Did you see when Rollins was wrapping his boot in that chain link, whatever? Like, did you? I don't know why. I just thought maybe it was a little bit of a nod towards the Young Bucks putting thumbtacks on their boot, like not in a positive way, as a kind of this is what other companies do. I don't know if you made that connection or not.
I mean, there were a few callbacks to other things on this match, right? Like Edge doing the elbow drop of the chair and everything. That's a callback to a spot that he had with The Undertaker a few years ago, for instance. So yeah, it could well have been a callback to the Young Bucks match. I have no doubt that Seth Rollins watches AEW and thinks that's the best thing ever, so.
Yeah, that's probably it, actually. That's probably where he got the idea from. Yeah. Why doesn't he just go over there and join the Elite? Then I can actually criticise him, real hard. Or better yet, go to Impact and never be seen again.
Oh well, he'll be renewing his feud with Bray Wyatt over at Impact.
Yeah, perfect stage for it, I think.
Strowman's going there as well. I mean, can get the mediocre WWE main eventers of the 2010s back together.
Oh Christ! Yeah. So then, next up we had the I suppose the hometown boy in Mansoor taking on Mustafa Ali. I think this was an occasion for the fans, which I think is absolutely fine. It's essentially a Saudi house show, and fans are clearly going to be in support of Mansoor. Although I've got to say, I was pretty impressed by his in-ring work. I don't think I'd paid much attention to any of his previous matches at the Saudi shows, but watching him last night was, I certainly wasn't disappointed. And it was, classic babyface heel dynamics, which, the traditionalist in me, liked, obviously. And I thought both guys played their part pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, they did their part pretty well, but this, from the perspective of someone watching on TV, nothing to write home about. There was also the guy who won silver for Saudi in the Olympics, the karate guy. He had the cameo as well, and apparently Dan, he got disqualified. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but somebody was saying that he got disqualified for like an illegal kick in the Olympics. So I found that hilarious.
Christ. Oh, yeah, I hadn't heard that. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those moments where I had no idea what was going on, but I recognised that it mattered to, the people in attendance. I was fine with it. Obviously, the commentators were pretty funny though when he was walking to the ring. I don't think they had a clue what was going on, or at least they gave a good impression that they didn't know what was going on.
I thought Pat McAfee was sort of missed on commentary. I mean, these buffoons just sort of annoying.
Yeah, he should be on every show.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty good. Are you would you call this the greatest undefeated streak in professional wrestling today, Mansour's?
Oh, it might well be. I mean, there's also Kenny Omega's undefeated streak of delivering the greatest balletic, anime-inspired performance and every show he's ever performed in.
Well, that's never going to break, is it? Well, that helps when you're the only person in the industry doing it, I suppose. But yeah, I didn't dislike this match. It was fine, and again, it was an occasion for the home fans, so I've got no complaints really.
Yeah, absolutely, and I haven't really been I haven't gotten a taste of this sort of tribalism that exists between the WWE and the AEW diehards and all of that. And so somebody recently added me to this wrestling WhatsApp group. And it's like a bunch of AEW fans saying, I want WWE to go out of business. I hope Tony Khan buys them. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what's going to happen if these guys become a monopoly. You're going to have to sit through 45 minutes of Kenny Omega doing Kamehamehas to a broomstick.
Yeah, I mean, with no competition, the Elite are pretty much they're going to become the new McMahon family, aren't they? So we can do whatever we want because there's no alternative.
Oh god. I mean, it also tells you a little bit about the intellect of some of these fans. I mean, they were crying for years that they didn't have an alternative, and now they don't want an alternative.
Yeah, indeed. Do you think? I mean, I don't know if the do you remember the same sort of tribalism back in the day with WCW, WWF? Like, was it just like these people just didn't have that same internet-based platform to vent their idiocy, or like was it just not there?
I'm sure the tribalism existed, but then, like you said, they probably just didn't have the platform to express this nonsense. And obviously, I was like 5 years old when the Monday Night Wars were going on, so I was probably a bit too young to actually know what's going on anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't mind it when the tribalism is kind of becomes part of the kayfabe. Like, I don't mind seeing like WWE sucks banners in an AEW audience because that feeds into the overall narrative. But when it's just people in echo chambers online shouting at each other, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, it was a nice detour. So yeah, I must admit the mid part of this show I did watch, but I slightly zoned out of. I don't know why. It was just maybe there was just nothing I was particularly looking forward to in these sort of next like 3 matches, I suppose. But I do remember Riddle riding it on a camel, if that matters.
Yeah, that was something.
And I guess the right team retained, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought it was a very decent match. They didn't let Omos get involved for the most part, and then Styles is one of the best anyway. He did his thing with Orton and Riddle, and I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
So, Dan, I think so. Riddle plays this goofy stoner guy. And he's never going to get anywhere. He's going to be stuck in the mid card forever until unless somebody has like an epiphany somewhere. But I just think this guy is so talented. He's athletic. He's a legitimate badass. He's got bags of charisma. Um, if you presented this guy with any sort of conviction, and you made him, and made the fans take him seriously, um, he could be a main eventer. I can't understand what they're trying to achieve with him.
Yeah, definitely see what you mean there. I think the only thing at this point you could probably do with Riddle is do like a complete gimmick reset where like I don't know, like just off the top of my head, like somebody like MVP coming in and like taking him under his wing and saying, you're not this like clownish, idiotic stoner character that you're being portrayed as. You're you're MMA trained. You've got this sort of badass aura about you when it's played right. So kind of bringing him into something like the Hurt Business and giving him that complete makeover, that could be a launching pad for him to go further. And then if you wanted to turn him turn him face in the future again, you could incorporate a little bit of the goofiness here and there, but you need that that period of time where he's just taken seriously, I suppose.
Yeah. So again, speaking of the tribalism, so I was making this point on that WhatsApp group, and somebody told me that Riddle should go to AEW. That's exactly what Riddle needs. He needs more exposure to the elite.
But yeah, I definitely agree with you. That's the last thing that you need is to be saddled with the gymnasts at this point. And full credit to Randy Orton still being there. Still given the credibility that I think he's able to give to the WWE in situations like this where it's a bit of a throwaway card. Randy Orton still has that that place cemented, I suppose, and yeah, it's just another indication that he is probably one of the greatest of all time in a way.
Oh yeah. Randy got his paycheck.
Absolutely. So I mean, yes. I don't know if there's anything else to say on that match, but again, the next match with the Queen's Crown tournament final. Again, didn't I watch, but I wasn't really that invested in. But yeah, I understand you were not too impressed by this one.
No, I thought this was pretty flat. So then, there's just no stakes to this, because in the build-up to this final, they gave the women, 3 matches of television time. In the build-up to it, so somebody on Cage Side or one of those websites said that the entire Queen's Crown tournament took 20 minutes of TV time. So, so that's the entire thing from start to finish, really. That's how many of the qualifiers and all of that. So, it went 6 minutes, nobody cared, and it was what it was. I mean, I feel a bit sad because when she was in NXT, I just thought Zelina Vega was so talented and so charismatic, and she was electric on the microphone, and she added so much to the product. And I mean, they've squandered her on the main roster.
Yeah, and also, why the hell is she still called Doudrop? Piper Niven is a very, very credible wrestler in from the British scene, and I thought that this whole Doudrop thing was given to her as part of the gimmick of being with Eva Marie. So now she's free of her, can she not just go back to what brought her to the dance in the first place? I don't know.
Oh, I have no idea. I had no idea that Doudrop was Piper Niven.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I know huge amount about her, but I know that she was pretty well respected, and she's got a unique look and a good approach to wrestling. So I think they could do much more than her with rather than just keeping her as this really random cookie cutter main roster gimmick.
So then, just to go down another rabbit hole, a few years ago, the UK independent scene seemed to be doing well. It was, producing a few talented guys, some of whom went on to become gymnasts. Is the scene still healthy?
I think I get the impression that it's been pretty much monopolised now by the two big companies in the US. I think because WWE recognised the momentum that the British scene had behind it and decided to try and help it by completely dismantling it and incorporating it into the machine or whatever. But yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if people are expecting me to talk positively about the British indie scene. Like I see the British indie scene in the same way that I see any indie scene. It's untrained clowns doing
gymnastics and synchronized yoga or whatever. And it's,
oh my god, it come off so well in the comment section.
Yeah, it's when he said, "Is it still healthy?" I was like, I don't think it ever was healthy, to be honest. I think it's just WWE clutching at any straw. They thought, the British scene's getting some interest. Let's go in and steamroll it.
I mean, well, they tried to steamroll the other show. It turned out the guy had more money than them.
Yeah. I don't know. That this is me, talking, as a fan, I suppose. But like from the wrestlers' points of view, if you're in that scene and you do get that attention from one of the big companies in the US, of course you're going to take it, and of course you're going to allow them to rename you as Doudrop, because that's where that's where people are watching. That's where the money is. Like, I don't blame her for doing it. But...
Oh my god.
So we've already slipped into this sort of grumpy old man zone already, and I don't think the next match is going to bring us out of that, to be honest, either. It was Goldust taking on Bobby Lashley, a match that nobody needed, but wasn't too offensive in the end. I suppose we all got it. We all got through it. Goldberg wasn't sort of pissing all over the future main events fire. He's taken on Bobby Lashley, who's, let's face it, had a pretty good time with the WWE Championship so far. So it felt like the result of this wasn't too inoffensive. Goldberg got his revenge for Bobby Lashley manhandling his son, and let's all go home and forget about it.
So, I was just complaining to you about how they booked Riddle. And here, Goldberg is the 60-year-old guy. He's, the last legs of his run. He's on his way out. And they book him like a badass babyface who's going to draw millions and millions of dollars. I mean, he's got a grudge because this guy's wronged his family. He comes out like a badass. He kicks Bobby Lashley all over the place and finishes him with a spear off the ramp. Why can't they book other people like this? This is why people get frustrated with WWE. It's not that they don't know how to make stars. They clearly do. It's just that they refuse to do it.
Yeah, I mean, even saying it like that, I mean, again, I wasn't pay too much attention to it, but the way you described it then, it's like, they followed this sort of logical conclusion to the feud that's been going on. Of course, Goldberg's going to be pissed. It's turned, from a wrestling match into a personal sort of blood feud, essentially. So they told that story fine, and maybe that's an indication that guys from the past were just, I don't know, just around like better writers and a better creative team, and they sort of know how to like tell a story, I suppose. Because you see it so often these days where like the feud is really, really intense, and one guy's got a legitimate reason to completely destroy the other guy, but then when they come out for the match, they're still acting the same as it was any other match, like smiling and high-fiving the audience and stuff. And you think, just have some effort and tell some kind of a believable story. So it was nice to see that, I suppose.
Like you said, it's these guys, they come back from the past. They book them carefully. They present them well. They protect them. And they don't afford the guys who are on TV every week nearly as much attention or care. And then they start complaining about them not getting over. Well, I mean, it's sort of a chicken and egg situation. Unless you treat them with reverence and you book them properly, they'll never get over.
Yeah, I mean, it is a chicken and egg situation because, as Vince said on the Stone Cold podcast, I think he genuinely believes that, there isn't really anyone on the current roster that has that fire within them to really, really push the envelope and become a huge star like The Rock and Stone Cold. And then the other side of that debate is that Vince isn't allowing people to do that. But I don't know, I think when I first heard Vince's comments back then, I was a little bit put off as a fan. I thought, no, like that's the wrong way of looking at it. But I don't know, like I suppose as I've been taking wrestling a little bit more seriously and doing these podcasts and everything, I think I'm starting to see where Vince is coming from. Because I just, I don't think there. I genuinely don't think there is that same determination, and whenever you see it so many times when somebody goes to AW and they're like, oh, now they can do whatever they want because they haven't got the evil McMahon empire, holding them down. But then they're given that platform and they go nowhere with it.
I think John Moxley would disagree with you. You don't like watching John Moxley crawl through shards of glass, survive beatings with a barbed wire baseball bat, and then get fucking hosed down by a microphone.
Well, yes, I mean, John Moxley is the perfect example, I think, of, it wasn't so much that Vince was holding him down, it was just that he recognised that what he was capable of wasn't quite good enough for his main event scene, and that's why he restricted him. And sooner or later, something's got to give, and you've just got to let him, set him free and do his mediocre shit that he does on AW.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, so is the answer to this? So is the answer to the question why is professional wrestling on its ass just that all of these guys are a bunch of buffoons who are useless?
Yes, I suppose in a way. I mean, taking
one decent pro wrestler in an entire generation. I mean, Reigns is not bad. I'll give him. I can live with him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I suppose it's harder as a younger wrestler coming into the business because these aren't the days of the 80s or the late 90s. So I think the best you can hope for as a wrestler at the minute is to be like somewhat respected by as big a part of the audience as you can possibly get, and then maybe kind of use your celebrity and everything to pursue other avenues. But there just isn't that clear line between if I do well in this business it will lead on to bigger things, I'll become a main popular culture star, people will know me even if they don't watch wrestling. Like that doesn't exist anymore, and I think wrestling is so far from that I don't think it will happen for a very long time now. So it's very insular, like insulated industry. The loudest sections of the audience are
for John Cena and Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, but even then, I mean, at least Cena's boom period wasn't exactly a wrestling boom period or anything, but he was coming into the industry not that long removed from guys like The Rock and Stone Cold reaching those levels. So I suppose he kind of had that desire and that vision in him to see where this could take him. But if you're coming into wrestling now and the last 20 years have just been, from an entertainment perspective, just a bit of a write-off, and you just, I think that really, really zaps your motivation to really kind of have the confidence to step out of the box and actually do something original.
Yeah, it's just been flashes of brilliance from time to time and a lot of garbage in between.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. Like, gone are the days of anyone like knowing who any of these wrestlers are that don't watch the product in itself. And I'm not saying that the whole point of wrestling is to become famous in other industries. I'm just saying that that's a reflection of how big wrestling can be if it was done properly.
And I think if you're the top guy in WWE, they still get enough coverage from ESPN and people like that. You can sort of parlay it into something, right? But
yeah, but I don't live in the States, so I don't know. But I get the impression that that's only promoted through the WWE themselves. It's like they have these collages of different American newspapers with wrestling stories on them. But I don't know how big a thing that is for people who don't already watch the product.
But it's still exposure in a way, and it gets your name out there at least.
Yeah.
I mean, it could at least get some movie director or producer to at least notice you if you're lucky, I guess. But I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying Roman Reigns is going to be a Hollywood star or anything, but
But I suppose, even like when you really think about it, like The Rock is probably the only guy who's broke into Hollywood and actually had a decent go at it. I mean, like Cena's still got time and he could potentially get there, but no one's really claiming that Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold's movies were anything to write home about.
To be fair, yeah, I mean, I don't think Steve Austin will tell you that he considered himself an actor. I mean, he dabbled in it, but
yeah. But still, even that, like, I think a lot of people know who Stone Cold is, and they probably haven't watched a second of wrestling before, and but because The Rock is someone who like broke out of wrestling and became a star in his own right. Like Stone Cold was someone who became so famous just because of how famous wrestling was at that time. I think that's fair. Which again is an indication of how big wrestling can actually get if it's done properly.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, it's not going to get that big again. So.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. Not with shows like this. But yes, okay. I mean, this is from here on is where I started to take a bit more interest in the show, and I think this is I think the show overall kind of ended pretty well. I think the second half of it was pretty strong, and it started off with the King of the Ring finals tournament. Xavier Woods against Finn Balor. Right guy won. You're happy with the result. Balor didn't really need this. This was really sort of Xavier Woods' story, and I'm glad that they went with him in the end.
Yeah, I mean, this is a swerve in some ways, because whenever somebody gives you something like this, latch on to WWE goes the other way. But yeah, I mean, Finn Balor did not need it, and I guess Xavier Woods could have used it.
I've got to say, actually, I mean, Xavier Woods is massively underrated for me as a talent. I know people like him, but I don't think that people like truly appreciate what he brings to wrestling. Because he always seems to take whatever he's given really seriously, and he makes it into a deal that people care about. I'm thinking back to that feud between the New Day and the Wyatts like a few years ago. I mean, like Xavier Woods was the only guy I saw that like played the opponent of Bray Wyatt correctly. Like he made you believe that he was genuinely terrified of the Wyatt family, and something very believable about his character work. And here he's managed to take something like the King of the Ring that frankly nobody cares about anymore, and he's turned it into something that people have been talking about. It was a really sort of important moment on this show overall as well. So I've really got to give him credit. I think he doesn't get the respect I think that he deserves.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he has a great mind for wrestling, which of course means he's out of place in today's day and age. But he has a reverence for what fans care about, and he has a feel for it, which nobody else seems to have.
And it's rare these days to see someone who I don't think anyone's ever going to expect him to reach the world championship level, but he's a character that people care about despite that, because like so much these days with the wrestlers is that if you don't get to that main event scene, then you ultimately don't matter. Whereas in previous eras of wrestling, you had that all the time. Guys like Jake Roberts, $1 Million Man, like all these characters that never reached the pinnacle were still remembered today as like very compelling and interesting characters. And yeah, it's a bit of a lost art in itself, that is, to make yourself relevant even though that you're never going to be taken properly seriously as a main eventer.
Do you think that it was easier to get people over all over the card than just because the product used to be hot? Like if you look at AEW, for example, their fan base, they're more invested in people like MJF and Sammy Guevara and people like that, even if they're not necessarily in the main event. Whereas in WWE, like, it doesn't really feel that way at all.
Yeah, I mean, definitely on the AEW part. If there's one thing that they're doing a lot better than WWE, and I will give them credit for it, is that they do make most of the people on the show feel like they matter. There aren't that many. like, not every match is brilliant, but there aren't so many of these throwaway matches that could easily have not have been there. And that's something that WWE have done far too much of in recent years. So yeah, it is. Yeah, and I suppose that's an art in itself, is again to make people matter, even though like the prize at the end isn't the big one. And yeah, maybe it was easier to do it back when wrestling was bigger, just because you had more of an audience to showcase things to, and you had more of a receptive, appreciative audience than you do today.
It's just that goodwill, Dan. I mean, once the audience has a goodwill towards the product, it seems to be easier for everything to get over and for everything to work, as opposed to now when it's just like a struggle for anything to happen, really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's the general kind of fan apathy that eventually creeps in. And again, probably because we talk about this period from the end of the Attitude Era to today, where WWE was pretty much the only show in town. So it's no surprise that now that there is a competition, that there is a little bit more buzz and excitement around things, and you're going to have more of an appreciative audience. Because basically, if you're a diehard AEW fan, then it really matters to you that your product is better than the WWE's. So you will naturally, be more engaged in these sort of mid card stars, or these sort of like fresher talent coming through the ranks than WWE fans tend to be, I suppose. Another chicken and egg situation there, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
But yes, very happy to see Xavier Woods get this spot, and I think Finn Balor did his part pretty well, but he definitely didn't need this.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay, but the thing is, I feel like Finn Balor losing this match should feel like a bigger deal than it is. I mean, they beat him like a drum when he isn't playing the Demon, so beating Finn Balor doesn't feel like as much of a big deal as it should for Woods. Like, Finn Balor should have been protected a lot more, and this win should have felt a little bit more. But anyway, I guess Woods got his feel-good moment, and then that's all that really matters.
I mean, maybe that's an indication that this is another one of those where the company have had to keep up with the fans in terms of like how big a deal it is for Xavier Woods to win the King of the Ring, because this could have easily have been another like throwaway King of the Ring tournament that nobody remembered like the day after. But yeah, if they'd have caught on to that a bit earlier, they could have maybe manufactured a situation where you've got a heel facing Woods in this match, and then the victory would have felt a little bit more than it was, I suppose.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Yes, so then we move on to the WWE Championship match. I've got to just before we start, actually, what are you making of Big E as a champion?
It was really cool when Big E won the WWE Championship, just because everybody liked Big E, and the culmination of his chase just felt like a feel-good moment. But ever since then, I mean, his title run's been okay, I guess. McIntyre is a decent challenger to start things off with, and they didn't do a bad job in this match, I thought.
Yeah, this was an easy way to give Big E a big championship victory, I suppose, because we know that Drew's moving to SmackDown anyway, so nobody expected him to win. But he's still a big enough name where it matters that Big E was able to retain his championship, so I think that was fine. As for the title reign, I still don't really believe that they know what they're doing fully with him yet. Like naturally they've had to step back, from the New Day stuff, because he's, because I was watching like the Drew's entrance, which I think is it's a pretty cool thing actually that WWE have managed to put together. And then I thought if they just do Big E's entrance with his normal like introduction where he does with a New Day, I just think it's just going to look completely out of place and hokey. And I'm quite glad that they've given him his own sort of theme and everything now. But it still doesn't feel like fully completed yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm also just not a big fan of the entire Money in the Bank cash in for a babyface. I mean, at least in the way he did it. Like, it's okay, if you do it the way Rob Van Dam did, where you sort of use it to set up like a match beforehand, and then you go and you win it clean. But the other way, but the way Big E did it, not a big fan.
Yeah, I think they missed a massive opportunity there. They could have done that, especially with Bobby Lashley as a champion. They could have manufactured that easily. Just Big E announcing the date that he was going to have his match, and it would have made more sense for him to win as a babyface. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
So Dad, what do you think's next for McIntyre?
I think it's pretty. It's a positive that he's moving to SmackDown. It's a new platform for him. It's the better show. With I think still, I imagine the greater viewing figures. I don't know. Actually, I don't. Actually, I'm not based that on anything. Is SmackDown beating Raw in the ratings? Do you know? Or?
Oh yeah. I mean, they're on Fox as well, so.
Oh, of course, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it can only lead to better things. I think he would have really faded into obscurity if he'd stayed on Raw for too much longer. And I suppose SmackDown does need that babyface, for Reigns to face at some point. So it makes sense as a move. Still don't fully buy him as a babyface though. I think he probably does better work as a heel, but yeah, with Roman Reigns on the brand, it's difficult to be an effective heel on SmackDown at the moment, I think.
Oh yeah. Roman Reigns overshadows everything else.
Yeah. But I know Survivor Series is coming up, so I think we're expecting a Big E and Roman match at some point, I guess. That should be pretty cool.
I mean, I personally wish they just do regular storylines, because this brand versus brand thing, nobody really cares about it. I mean, it's the same company at the end of the day. The real war you're fighting is with the AEW anyway, so.
Yeah, but I mean, nobody really cares about the storylines anyway, so it doesn't matter that much. If they were actually interrupting storylines that people were invested in, I'd say you'd have a point. But I just think, why not just do this random Raw versus SmackDown thing? It's it fills up a month, I suppose.
I mean, I don't. Well, I mean, Dad, there is one story I think people care about, and I think we're going to get to it now. Actually, I don't even know if people care about it. I just think it's well done. I don't know if people care about it.
Well, I guess we're talking Reigns and Lesnar. I mean, because I guess I get the impression that they're putting that on hold for a little bit. Are they, just so they can build up to something later? Or...
Yeah, it looks like it. I saw a report saying that Lesnar was going to be on SmackDown, but I don't really know. But obviously they're not going to do Lesnar versus Reigns at the next pay-per-view or whatever. Meltzer was saying that this is going to go all the way until WrestleMania. So.
And I suppose the story within the story is what's going on with Heyman as well. So you could keep that going pretty easily, without Brock necessarily having to be there. So.
Yeah, and they left enough grey area in there as well. Like, he threw the belt into the ring, but it wasn't obvious who he threw it to, I guess.
Yeah, that was actually pretty clever. It was, it is interesting actually. Like, as WWE put themselves in situations a lot like this, and then you're kind of curious to see how they're going to write themselves out of it. And they're very good at delaying the conclusion. Like they're good at sort of kicking the can down the road and keeping us sort of guessing. But I think that's more a result of WWE kind of making up as they go along as well, rather than this sort of long-term storytelling.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, I kind of get the feeling now that they rushed Lesnar back in response to AEW signing Punk and Danielson. I think I mean, otherwise they would have saved this until the Rumble or something like that.
Yeah. I suppose, I mean, what other options would they have had, though, if not Lesnar? Because Vince is really quickly running out of those sort of guys from the past that he can rely on now, which is another point, actually. Like, the reason why this was a better Saudi show than most of the others is because, we didn't have to see Undertaker, like, labour for a match and risk his life just to, satisfy the Saudi dollar.
Yeah. Is there any chance Hulk Hogan could do a match? No?
Oh, good God, let's hope not.
Kevin Nash, perhaps?
Would you put it past Tony Khan if he had the possibility of doing Sting versus Hogan?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. He'd finally get that finish right.
Okay, I'll say it now. If Tony Khan books that match and manages to give us a good conclusion to the Sting and Hogan thing, I will be, I will be an AW convert for life. We've kind of skipped the triple threat women's match. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about this as like pretty decent, like if not like like a great match or whatever. Am I like so out of touch with the modern wrestling fan? Because all I saw was just a very awkward, clumsy 3-match affair with essentially sort of female gymnasts. To be honest, I don't really get it.
No, I thought it was a decent. I mean, I thought it was a decent match. Then I didn't think that this was as much of a gymnastics performance, as we see on the other show. But it's just that whenever it's a triple threat match, it sort of it devolves into that template where you have one person selling their injuries outside the ring, and then the two people in there just do like a bunch of high spots, and then somebody else comes in and somebody else rolls out, and then it goes on forever after more.
Yeah, but I suppose it wouldn't be fair of me to sit here and constantly criticise AW's sort of reliance on gymnastics, but I've got to say, I mean, I do like Bianca Belair. I think she's a really good character and she's got huge potential, but she does kind of rely on that a little bit too much. Her athletic ability in gymnastics, like you don't have to do a cartwheel before you like do an elbow drop. It's like at least you don't have to go to that well all the time, and it really takes me out of her matches. Another thing about this match that really pissed me off as well is I hate when they do that like the double submission move, because logically it makes no sense, because like if the person taps out, like it doesn't mean you win the match, because they did it so many times, and like they were sort of deliberately setting up those spots where it would happen. I think even I think the Becky Lynch double armbar spot, you could even see Sasha like maneuvering herself to get into that position so that she could put her arm where Bianca's arm was, and I just thought it was so contrived. It just really stopped me from like really enjoying this, I think.
I mean, yeah, I think I mean, I guess with triple threats, I mean, it can be difficult to suspend your disbelief, but maybe it's just the frame of mind I was in. It was getting quite late in the night. I just sort of enjoyed it.
Yeah, maybe I'm just being too much of a mark. I don't know, or smart. Sorry, not a mark. But yeah, I was just really surprised. I naturally go and watch people's reviews after I've seen the show, and I even heard somebody talk about this was clearly the match of the night, if not match of the year. I'm like, what are you taking? And can I have some, please? And also the interesting dynamics here with Becky retaining, even though she's going to Raw. So you're anticipating a bit of a switcheroo happening at Survivor Series?
Yeah, I mean, I think they literally had the tag champions swap belts last year, and that didn't go down very well, so maybe they do that again, but I don't know.
Yeah. At least we get to see, Becky Lynch and Charlotte. It's a match we've never seen before.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So yeah,
By the
let's.
way, WWE does not get credit for quote unquote revolutionizing women's wrestling anymore. Like, you literally have four people that you book with any sort of fucking relevant, with any sort of fucking care and attention and whatever the fuck. Like, nobody don't care about anybody else. It's just Bailey and Banks and Charlotte and Lynch and like fucking different permutations and combinations.
Yeah, I think, I think some of the goodwill around like promotion of women's wrestling has sort of died off recently because they just feel like they're booking it the same way as they do the men's.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Lynch's fantastic personality and all of that, and I think she's amazing. But uh, some fresh opponents, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose we've got to mention that this was a Saudi show, and when you put women in the ring that people care about, you're going to get a positive reaction from the fan base, and it just goes to show that when you if you look past the questions around sort of gender and everything, and how far we should push one type of performer over the other, and just let individuals be themselves and try and win the fans over, you'll get there eventually. So I just thought that was pretty cool. It was it didn't feel out of place at all on this show. The crowd were really into it. Like they really seemed to be behind Becky, and that's just a testament to the character that the company's formed over the last few years. And I just thought that was pretty well, it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So then we finish the night with the main event, which I think we all expected: Roman Reigns against Brock Lesnar. We spoke about it already a little bit, the way they ended the match. But what did you make of the match itself?
Typical Brock Lesnar match. I mean, lots of action, lots of high spots. Um, this is a combination we've seen a lot of times, but just because of this twist, I mean, it was something that you could sort of pay attention to, and yeah, I quite enjoyed it, I would say.
It's it definitely was a typical Lesnar match in terms of moveset, but I suppose you could also say it was a typical Roman Reigns match because the the in-ring action wasn't the main point of interest. It was the storyline and the drama around it. And again, Heyman played a brilliant part in that with the way he conducted himself at ringside. He wasn't
Oh yeah.
obviously going for one person over the other. It was very, and the commentators picked up on that as well, which was good. Um, and yeah, enough ambiguity at the ending for you to keep guessing what's going to happen come Mania season.
You can't put Lesnar over Reigns, surely.
Um, no, I don't think so. Could you do? Is there enough time to do this? I think at some point, well, at least at some point, Vince is thinking that he wants Roman to be face. So could you conduct a scenario where Heyman sides with Lesnar, turning them both heel, and then you've got a kind of Reigns babyface dynamic going against Lesnar in the main event of Mania? Would that work? Or
Um, no, I don't think so. I think babyface Reigns was horrible.
Yeah.
I stopped watching wrestling just because of the babyface Reigns. So
but you don't have to revert back to exactly what he was. Like you could retain the sort of the final boss badass kind of feel that he has, but like essentially kind of keep him the same, but just put him against heels rather than faces, maybe.
I mean, but who would he? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's a bit premature to do that. I mean, I think I'd still persist with Reigns in this iteration until you can do the thing with the Rock a year from now or whatever.
Yeah. It probably is far too early to do anything like that. But yeah, I suppose it's something they've got to consider at some point. I don't know. Although I don't know. I mean, saying that there are plenty of main event talent that have been heels most of their career. I mean, Triple H was always better as a heel, and he played that character for most of his in-ring career, I think. So I suppose you could do a similar thing with Reigns. It's just that you don't have that equivalent babyface to go against him as you did with Triple H.
Yeah. They need to create new stars. Dan, this is I mean, the male division anyway. It's just like one guy and everything else like revolves around him at the moment. I mean, I'm tired of seeing them work together all the time, but like at least Banks and Charlotte and Lynch and all these people are credible and interesting at times. By the way, earlier I said, Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan are like the only two competent professional wrestlers of the last 10 years. I think Becky Lynch should be on that list as well.
Yeah, I suppose so. She's like certainly the best thing that's come out of the women's revolution, whatever. And she made a gimmick for herself that clearly got over, and she did a very rare thing actually, where she sort of turned herself basically babyface with a new heel persona, and then the creative team actually got behind it and went with it and turned her face. Like normally you would have this sort of awkward like heel Becky Lynch being cheered for months and months before they finally realised they needed to turn her face. So like credit where it's due,
Yeah, and she's got bags of charisma, fantastic trash talker. It's just really entertaining.
Yeah, and I think it showed as well because they were pairing her with certain people, and she had an appearance with Stone Cold at one point, where they were just in the ring drinking beer together, and like I think for today, I think with Vince McMahon, that's probably the biggest compliment he can give you, if he's willing to give you screen time with these legends from the past.
Oh yeah, I suppose. I mean, for me, I'm always going to remember that moment on Raw when she's sort of taking on the entire Raw women's division by herself, and she's standing there with that bloody nose and just like goading these people as she's taken them out. Like that's just so badass.
Yeah, no, that was tremendous. And yeah, one of those sort of those timing scenarios where you couldn't do her and Ronda at Survivor Series, but then you could build it to WrestleMania. Unfortunately, they just had to wedge Charlotte Flair in there as well, and just basically derail the momentum that had been started.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This is why I don't really want. Because I know they're doing a heel thing with Becky at the minute, but I think that they're missing a big opportunity, because I think fans are like fed up enough of the Charlotte Flair character. That's clear to see, and they've got her as a heel character now. So why not just use some of the the magic of the Becky Lynch babyface character from a couple of years ago, and use that as someone to go after Charlotte? I just think that would just be a really big moment for like Mania, maybe just the two of them one on one. Someone the fans actually like beating someone they don't.
Yeah, that could work actually. But I mean, I don't know if they have time to course correct at right at present. But what you said would have been a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, as with most things in WWE, that ship is sailing now. But
do you think Tony Khan would have gotten it right?
I mean, judging by the AW's women's division, probably not.
You can have 2 minutes of TV time. Kenny's not got a new broom he's excited to work with.
Yeah, we'll give you a bit of a spotlight, and then you have to spend the next few months feuding with this Japanese woman that nobody knows.